a roll call.
Let's see. Mr. Haynes.
Yes.
Mrs. Hans.
Here.
Paul Slowey. I'll just, instead of used to doing it the other way. Bo Harbin.
Present.
Chuck Feisley.
Here.
Paul Dries. Emily DeSenza. Lori Comfort.
Here.
Wendy Miller.
I'm here.
Amy Bertini.
Here.
Ann Swisher.
Here. I see we have a couple of guests present tonight. If you would like to, one at a time, David and Edward, introduce yourself and let us know what application you are associated with.
Yeah, I'm Dave Yaman. I'm associated with Cortland Commerce. I guess we call it Phase 2, the complex behind the old Smith Corona facility. Ed Keplinger is on. He is the engineer that's involved in the design and the details of the facility. And Jamie Yaman is on as well, my son. He's a partner in this.
Thank you. And with that, let's jump to approval of the previous December meeting minutes. Can I get a motion to accept the minutes from December?
I move. Amy.
I'll second.
And second,
Emma.
Emma. Okay. All those in favor?
Aye.
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 Anybody opposed to anything that was written? Nope. Okay, so remarks, we have at this meeting, we have a nominating committee to bring to our slate of officers. The nominating committee is Chuck Feisley, Amy Bertini, and Lori Comfort. And with that, I'll let you guys take over for your nominations.
We had an online meeting basically today and just basically summarize what we talked about last meeting, which as long as no one's objecting to it, we will keep the same officers. And that was the chair of Ann Swisher, vice chair Amy Bertini, secretary Wendy, and the at-large people were Lori and I.
Okay.
I'll make a motion to accept that from the committee and nominate them for the full board's consideration.
Can we get a second?
I'll second it.
All those in favor?
Aye.
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 Aye. Anybody opposed? Okay. So the new slate of officers will remain as existing slate of officers from last year. One other thing I would like to mention in the remarks here is there was a mention of the bylaws in last month's meeting minutes, and maybe it would be for all of us to have a copy of the bylaws.
Yes.
I can send that out to everyone.
We have
Yeah.
those to go over.
No.
Oh, no,
We'll
no,
go over
no.
the
We have the
GML
GML.
referrals.
Yep, the referrals.
But I can send out the bylaws. And I can send out the
Yep.
referrals too, if you have it in the packet, but
Yes.
individually.
We were just reviewing some things in the bylaws today, so.
Yeah, we were talking about them.
Okay.
That'd be good. Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And I guess with that, I'll turn it over to the director for her remarks and comments.
Unless anybody else is opposed, we can, we have the referral policies to do a reevaluation of. But we can go ahead and do go through the GML reviews and the returns first for the people's sake who are on concerning those.
Okay.
So with that, we can start off with the GML application we received from Cortlandville. I think Alex has got it up on the screen. Is everybody able to see that with the bandwidth issues going on? I just want to make sure that everybody
can
see it. We've
Yes.
got 2 of them from Cortlandville.
Yep.
Yeah.
And we'll start with Mr. Yaman's submission for Portland Commerce.
Right. So first one is, as we've got 2 from Cortlandville, 1 from Virgil this time around. So we've got the first one from Dave Yaman, requesting a subdivision, conditional permit, and aquifer protection special permit to construct a multi-phased warehouse/manufacturing facility. 1 38,000 square foot building, building A, 4 30,000 square foot buildings, B, C, D, and F, and 1 20,000 square foot building, building E, along with the associated driveways, parking areas, loading docks, utility services, stormwater management facilities, and landscaping. They're going to be subdividing the development parcel off of the current Cortland Commerce Center parcel and a portion of the J.M. Murray parcel. And see, this is an I-1 district, which this is permitted in an I-1 district, subject to site plan approval and conditional permit. And it's in the Aquifer Protection District, and the cost is exceeding $150,000, so Aquifer Protection Special Permit as well. So applicant is looking to build this project in phases. Building A and E on the plans are going to be in phase 1. The rest have been stated will be built as needed. We'll get that a little bit later. Let's see. So as this is subdivision as part of this approval, they just need to provide everything that's required for a final subdivision plan. Pretty basic. And also part of the subdivision that requires all subdivided lots to abut a street. This is achieved by kind of a sliver up in the north of the property. However, ingress egress will be off of the same road, but off of an existing drive behind the, what was it called? The medical center, Actuant Medical building there. There'll also be some ingress egress off of Route 13, but most of it will be off of Lime Hollow Road. It is also within the wellhead protection zone. Part of it's in 1A, part of it's in 1B. Parts in 1A have to have 50% green space. In 1B, 30%. All the parcels meet that pretty easily with some room to spare for any alterations that may happen in later phases. There's plenty of room to spare. Let's see, the submitted off-street parking spaces provided on the site plan should be sufficient for phase 1, but in later phases it should be reevaluated depending on the use. Site plan takes into consideration most of the guidelines enumerated section of the code. However, lighting, pedestrian, non-motorized access, and trash collection locations are not considered. So we've got some recommendations dealing with that. Then a SWIP needs to be produced, and applicant has said that that will be made. CRC met regarding this part, or this development. We had DEC comment that since it will disturb more than 5 acres, you have a SWIP. They were already going to make a SWIP, so just got to submit that to DEC. I believe they've been in contact. Well, at least that conversation has been started since the CRC, I believe. Jeff Deep from NISDOT, they're already talking with him, but they'll need a traffic impact study. And if anything comes, if anything is proposed from that traffic impact study, then they need work permits if they're going to work in the highway. Another thing to note about this site is there is a DEC environmental site remediation project on the site, but that remediation is nearing completion. Applicant is working with DEC to make sure they can be developed safely. Finally, this is a type 1 action under seeker, so you have to make sure that the full environmental assessment form is filled out, which it has been, and any other associated seeker isms with type 1. So my recommendations, or the staff's recommendations, are one, that a final subdivision plan be presented to the town in conformance with section 140-9 of the code, that right-of-way language be added into the deeds of both the J.M. Murray, or not the J.M. Murray, the Cortland Commerce Center parcel and the newly proposed development parcel, that the applicant apply for and obtain a conditional permit for each phase of the project to ensure compliance with the code. That is, phase 1 will be covered and other phases will have to be submitted again. That a lighting plan be submitted to the town to ensure adequate lighting is provided. That the town consider if pedestrian and non-motorized access to the site is adequate. That a SWIP is presented to the town. That a SWIP is presented to DEC and it's approved by DEC. That a traffic impact study for the full build is presented to the town and NISDOT. That the applicant obtain a permit from NISDOT for any work within the state right-of-way that may need to occur. That the applicant continue coordination with DEC to ensure the development does not interfere with the site remediation and compliance with seeker.
Can I get a motion to accept staff's recommendations?
I do. Amy.
In a second,
I'll second. Emma?
and discussion.
I have a question for the applicant, David or Ed. Are you guys okay with, what was it, 11 recommendations with the staff approval?
Yes, we are. We anticipate that. Maybe Ed, maybe you can
Yeah, we,
fill the group in on what's underway at this point.
sure. I apologize if for some reason my camera is not operating tonight, but we reviewed the 11 conditions or recommendations. We didn't have any issues with any of them. We coordinated the does my sound okay? Seem to be getting some feedback.
Little echo, yeah, but
Little echo.
Okay. Well, we've been in contact with DOT. We got the intersections that need to be studied, and we have a traffic report that will be prepared by GTS Consulting. We have a SWIP underway right now. We expect to have that completed in the next week or two. We have the lighting plan being prepared, and most of the rest of the recommendations are pretty straightforward, and we can take care of those conditions.
okay, good. I guess my question was posed sort of like, are you guys okay with it? Is it what you expect, or is there something that seems onerous there?
No, it was what we expected.
Okay, good. That's all I have.
It was on our list to do anyway.
Okay, good.
I had like a couple of minor items. One I went along with Paul. I wasn't sure it was too onerous to have you come back for conditional permits each time, but as long as you don't have a problem with it, I guess I don't have a problem with it. I did have an issue with the grading plans. Something looks wrong with building E, as though it's not completed, or you didn't do it, or you got more to work on or something. You had like a finished floor that was like 6 feet above ground, and you only had like a grade around the building of like, like you have to step up 6 feet to get to the first floor or something with no grades. So either screwed it up or it's not.
No, no, no. It wasn't finished. The finished floor elevation will be adjusted down a foot, and then
Okay.
the parking lot is graded up, and it doesn't show on this plan, but there's actually, if you look at the building F grading, it will
Yep.
be very similar to that, where
Okay.
the parking lot is sloping and elevated so that there's a flush entry to the building, and then the loading docks are held down.
Okay, just wondered, it didn't look right, so that was my question, what
So
what's
we
going on there? So as long as you will prepare something final for the planning board for Cortlandville, I'm sure they'll be looking at that anyhow, reviewing it, so and if there's much
This
stormwater
plan that
associated
you're
with that
reviewing is probably about a couple weeks old, and we just submitted new plans to Cortlandville yesterday.
Okay. I don't have a problem then. I assume there's there's a separate stormwater plan for that building E, or you're not too worried about it because it's all on a parking lot?
There is the basin will go just off the edge of the existing parking lot. I think we have it identified. Well, it's identified on that plan, but there'll be probably a 3 or 4 foot deep depression there for the storm basin.
Okay. I think that was all I had. Some of your building D, I'm assuming you got pipes that are coming out once the DEC backs off for existing remediation plans and stuff like that.
Yes, they'll be either come out or be rerouted.
Okay. I'm done.
I had a concern as far as what uses would end up in the warehouses and whether there will be checks and balances to allowable uses in a protected district and wellhead protection zone. Is that going to go before the town when and if each building is opened up and used for use?
Well, we'll design the building when we know we'll design the specifics of the building when we know the tenant. So we have a couple of tenants looking at A. We have one industry looking at E. And that's why you'll see the parking the way it is and the loading dock access as the way it is. Both of these, all three of the tenants, if they come along, if two of them come along, they store, they don't store chemicals. It's non-toxic activity inside. And I'm assuming that when we go for a building code or a building permit, more details will be asked by the code enforcement, by the building permit, the guy that issues the building permit. The rest of them, they're just a footprint at this point. When we know who we want to occupy it, then we will come back to the town. We'll design the building for the specific use. This is really a crystal ball look at what I think will happen. And it's based on 15, 20-year history of leasing space to industries. Cortland Commerce has about 16 tenants, and probably 8 or 9 of them are light manufacturers. They're occupying 15 to 20,000, 25,000 square feet. So that's what I anticipate. And when we know specifically who it is, then obviously we'll design each building to the use. What I'm looking for, and you're probably wondering why we're showing the site fully developed. It's a crystal ball look, but what we really need is a shovel-ready project. You know, in today's world, when you order steel, it takes 6 to 8 months to get it. If we have to spend 3 or 4 months with site plan approval, and then another 6 to 8 months getting steel, and then, of course, you know, designing the building itself, it's just not feasible. So this gives us a step up. It also assures us that we have the capacity and the right site to do what we want to do. So we know what our capacity, what our possibilities are.
Is there? Oh, go ahead.
My question, I mean, that's why I was wondering if you really wanted to go through a new permit every time you wanted to come back, as long as you were in compliance with this plan. I didn't know it was really necessary to come back to us each time, but as long as you guys are okay with that.
Well,
That is
I'm
like a
assuming,
3-month process, you know?
yeah, I'm assuming that we'll come back just once. You know, we'll design the details of the building, and that's pretty much all we need to do. I think it's reasonable for the town and the county to ask for the buildings to be designed for the use of the tenants. You know, some of the tenants need 2 loading docks, some need 4. You know, so we need to show you what we think will happen, and then come back to you, and hopefully in one meeting be able to, you know, get final approval.
Okay, as long as you're okay with that, it doesn't have to come back to us and it's a
Yeah.
90-day process again. The other
Yeah.
thing, Ann, for you, I mean, I assume, I don't know if in the recommendations, we could just add on that as long as you're in compliance with Cortlandville's restrictions regarding chemical use and storage on the properties and stuff like that, because they have specific things you can't use in certain areas. I think that would probably resolve any issue with what, you know, chemicals and stuff might be out there for the aquifer protection. So maybe.
Well, that's why we need to come back. I think you need to be assured that, you know, what's going to happen there is not going to cause a problem with it.
Okay.
I agree, Chuck. That would be potential added to the recommendations.
Yeah.
Dave, is there any reason why there can't be an ingress egress located on the property and not an easement? I'm a little concerned with the amount of heavy trucks pulling in. I'm sure the majority of them are going to be coming off the main route. And, you know, it just seems like you have access available.
Not really. Behind building E and D, that land drops off substantially. And we're going to improve the access off Lime Hollow to accommodate a higher volume. Once you get to the loop, you'll see the loop just in front of D. That traffic, you know, will be routed west, to be routed into the complex. The activity behind the building will not be increased because of this complex. And the access from the south of the building is really meant as a second means of access. And we're going to encourage or require everyone to use Lime Hollow. That'll be a traffic light access of Route 13. You got to keep in mind too. You know, Smith Corona at one time had, I think, 4,000 or 5,000 employees. So that road is, that access is pretty substantial now. But we need to improve it.
Anybody else have any issues? Okay, if nobody has anything, shall we make a motion to accept staff's recommendations?
We had the motion already.
I think we did.
Oh,
We're just up for a vote, right?
yeah, I'm sorry. Chuck, did you want to revise or add to the recommendations with a friendly amendment?
As long as he's coming back, I guess it's not a problem. I was going to add that if he wasn't going to come back all the time, as long as he they're going to have restrictions on what the what's allowed over the aquifer there. Cortland already has those in their ordinance. So as long as he's in compliance with them, he'll probably be okay.
Okay. So all those in favor of accepting staff's recommendations?
Aye.
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 Anybody opposed? Any abstentions? Okay. It shall be passed.
Thank you.
Thank
Pass,
you.
and
Thank
could we put a note on that, wishing him luck as well from the planning board?
Thanks, Paul.
All the bureaucratic
Thank you,
red
David.
tape. Thanks.
Thank you for coming, David and Ed.
Yeah, have a great evening.
Thank you.
Okay.
All right. The second one here, which I believe Joseph Perrone is involved with. It is a conditional permit and aquifer protection special permit from Suit-Kote Corporation. Let's see. Yeah. So they're looking to replace, essentially replace 4 tanks, 2 of them being 40,000 gallon tanks and 2 of them being 80,000 gallon tanks. There's a bit of history to this one, stretching back to the 80s. But I'll try to be brief, and if you have more specific questions, I think I've got a pretty good handle on it now. So the facility's been there for a while. It is in a B2 highway commercial business district. The use on the site normally in B2 districts would not be an allowable use. However, there were use variances both in 95 and 97, the year I was born, to make the use allowed. So now it is an allowable use, and since almost all uses within B2 districts are subject to conditional permit, the town has determined that this will need one as well. It's also in the Aquifer Protection District, so since it's exceeding 150,000 in development cost, there's also an Aquifer Protection Special Permit. I've gone over a bit of the history already, but essentially, there was one in the 80s to build a 20,000 gallon fuel tank. There were the 2 variances in 95 and 97. After that, there were 2 applications to rezone the property from business to industrial, just to satisfy everyone's desires. But it was struck down as spot zoning in 2001, a court decision. So the next 4 applications in 2002, 2005, and 2007, and 2007 again were very similar to this one that we're looking at now, just conditional permits because it is an allowable use, and an aquifer protection special permit, all for tanks. So this plan depicts 3 separate phases. However, only phase 1 has provided detailed plans, so this approval will only be for phase 1. Section 178-81 requires all construction/development in the special flood hazard area to obtain a floodplain development permit. I've looked at the FEMA maps, and there are parts of the property that are in the floodplain, special flood hazard area. So just a note for that. DEC was contacted in reference to the major oil storage facility license on the site and stormwater speedies. So, and then this is an unlisted action under seeker. So my recommendations, or staff's recommendations, I should say, are that the applicant apply for and obtain a separate conditional permit for phases 2 and 3 as shown on the plan. That the town make a determination as to the project's compliance with section 178-81, that is the floodplain development. That the applicant obtain approval from DEC, including possible modifications to existing permits and stormwater speedies. That any positive consideration of this proposal be contingent upon that DEC approval. That the applicant provide the town with provisions for removal of the tanks once they're no longer in use, which is standard, a standard recommendation that's been throughout almost every GMO we reviewed on this site for tanks. And finally, compliance with seeker.
And a motion to accept staff's recommendations.
Move it.
I'll
Second?
second it. I'll second it.
And discussion. First of all, I'd like to welcome Joseph Perrone. Are you part of this application, Joseph?
Yes, I am.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
We talked to
Discuss-
Joseph with a few questions that we had. And
Okay.
I just want to note that you can see from the map in phase 1, the first replacement of the 2 tanks on the north side of the site there. Those are going exactly where existing tanks already are. But the second part of phase 2 with the larger tank placements, a little just south of that, those 2 tanks are in the application. The wording says that they're replacing existing tanks, but the existing tanks aren't at that exact location. They're actually, you can see them under the hashed. Alex might be able to put his arrow there. They're located kind of where that hashed area is. And we spoke to Joe just to get some of that clarified. And Joe, you said that those tanks actually are currently removed already, correct?
The 2 tanks that are in the hashed area are still operational. We can't-
Those are being used, correct? I'm sorry.
Yes.
Yeah,
The 2
they're
to the right on the north side that we're replacing have
those
been
are being
removed
removed.
and have been cut up and disposed of.
Okay. And that's what you'll do with the other 2 tanks in the hashed area once the other 2 are up and operational and those are done being utilized.
That's correct. And then we'll take those out. And then phase 3, once those 2 tanks are gone, we have the ability to update and upgrade the tanks that run on the roadside in front of those 2 older 60,000 gallon tanks. So they'll be gone and we'll be able to move the tanks that are currently in front of them into a staggered formation so that there is ample room between them, which currently there is not under the old way of doing things. So we need to update and upgrade that.
I just want to note too that the conversation was had, the last application that was submitted in 2007 includes it basically covered the work that they're proposing to do in this application, but because it had been so long since the application was received and regulations could have changed and other requirements have obviously changed in that time span, Joe is sending this application in now and redoing it just to kind of cover that. And that's also a part, right, Joe, correct me if I'm wrong, part of why you're not just going ahead and applying for phase 1 through 3 right now, because this could be, you know, there's no real timeline on when you might be doing phase 3.
Right. So you're looking at in 2007 we were approved and given the okay to go ahead and do all of this, and here we are. Since that 7 tank 636,000 gallon approval, we've managed to install 1 40,000 gallon tank. So you know, all the forces that business has to contend with, COVID notwithstanding, some of those things don't happen in the timeline that we thought it might. So yeah, we're updating and upgrading that 2000 plan, still in the same vein and still headed in the same direction, but now taking into account current regulation and current technologies. So exactly that.
I have a question. Is there any containment provisions with these tanks?
Yes, actually, that's part of the MOSF, DEC MOSF regulation. The entire area, which is not entirely visible on the map, is a secondary containment for the materials that'll be in it. The containment has to be able to, oh, that's better. The containment has to be able to contain 110% of the entire volume of any tank on the premises. We are well over that amount. At this point in time, we could effectively release the majority of the material in all of the tanks and still have it remain inside the containment. So we are not through DEC and our MOSF license. That's a requirement. We wouldn't be able to exceed that.
Is the containment around each area of each tank, or is it around the perimeter of the property, or?
So it's around the perimeter of that piece of the property. If you were to release anything out of any of those tanks, it can't. I don't know if it's visible. There's some line there where you can see where the containment perimeter is around.
I think there's. You can see. I think you can see like some like a berm along the river, that kind of thing. You can see the tanks to let the water out, stuff like that. So you can kind of see some of it showing up in the drawings.
Right, and we have, yeah. Go ahead.
No, I was just gonna say, so the containment is in berm form.
Yes. Yes.
Okay, go ahead.
That's in accordance with what the Department of Environmental Conservation requires. We do not have materials that the berm is impervious, and it is permeability tested every 5 years to make sure that it remains impervious. So whatever spills out of, if anything were to spill out of any of the tanks, it remains right there on the property and it doesn't penetrate and it won't exceed or make it out of that containment.
Okay.
Is that including if we're in a flood?
Yes, that's the 110% rule. It has to take into account 100-year flood, rainfall, et cetera, et cetera. So, yes, the material would not leave that containment. And since it's asphalt, it can't. We follow the same rules that any petroleum facility would follow, whether it was gasoline or diesel fuel. However, the material that's in the tanks is asphalt, and it won't penetrate anyway, and it solidifies when it's loose. So our in most cases, method of cleanup is let it cool, roll it up, and use it again. So it doesn't really have any potential for getting loose from that containment.
Anybody else have any
I
concerns?
want to ask, because you were saying 110%, but you're increasing the tank capacity by 30%. Do you have enough capacity in the storage, in those berms and all, to contain the new significantly increased volume that you're going to be having on site?
Yes, let me put that in perspective for you. The containment value, the ability of the containment volume is 1.787, I believe, million gallons. The tanks that we're proposing to put in here barely increase the volume to 200 by 200,000 gallons. So, and the largest tank in the facility is 210,000 gallons. if, like I said, effectively, we could release everything inside those tanks and 10% and still not exceed the 1.7 million gallons that we have capacity. Does that make sense?
Mhm.
I hope I explained that clearly enough. It's not,
In the event of a spill, though, would the center of the site in the middle of the berms be permeable where materials could leach down through there? Or is the site covered with asphalt also, or?
so the site is, yes, the site is sealed, and that's what our permeability testing does every 5 years. Again, is a requirement of the MOSF license through the DEC. All of the grounds inside the berm are impervious to
Okay,
asphalt. So yeah, nothing could get through and permeate the ground, groundwater or anything like that inside that containment. That's the design of it, and that's the requirement of MOSF. We have to prove to DEC periodically that remains that way. The berms are also impervious. So the only way to let water out of that facility by our speedies permits is through registered outfalls, and those have to be monitored and tested and submitted to DEC in this facility's case quarterly. So we make sure that what's in it stays in it.
okay.
Alex or Tricia, is there any requirement or provision? I mean, we have in here the removal of the tanks being required, but what about the cleanup of this industrial site if Suit-Kote were to sell and leave and the county be stuck with potentially a brownfield situation? Is there any provision to be added into this to ensure that the site is cleaned up, not just that the tanks are removed?
Bo, are you talking about if in the case of just abandonment? Because I'm sure the DEC permits that they currently have stipulations in there as far as, at the end life of this site, if the user who owns the permits closes out those permits, that I'm sure there's requirements in those permits of what they have to do to remediate any potential locations on the site before they move. So I'm just,
And I can understand that, but I would be curious then why there's this special requirement about the provision to remove the tank that we've stated in this, and yet we make no state, and I assume that would also be covered by DEC permit, and yet we make no provision to say the site needs to be cleaned up to DEC standards so that we don't get stuck with yet another brownfield situation in Cortland County.
yeah, I think the original intent was just so that with the specific comment about them removing the tank itself, so that there wouldn't be a stack of old tanks in the corner of the property, just kind of sitting along the property line somewhere is my best guess, to be honest with you, Bo.
So when they put the new one in, take the old one away off site, get rid of it.
Yes.
Which is what we've done with the 2 tanks that we've taken down already. They will be cut up and recycled steel. They're in the process of actually doing that currently. Our DEC permits require that if we decommission a tank, which we've done these 2, they must be removed, and anything that would be considered contamination has to be remediated. So as far as the ground goes, that's okay. And then the tanks themselves, once they're decommissioned, it's actually in Suit-Kote's best interest to cut them up and dispose of them. Liability wise, we don't even want the hazard on the property, so we will dispose of them.
That being said, Bo, if, the board prefers, we could certainly remove that recommendation.
Or add to it.
Joe, just kind of following up on what Bo was talking about. Are you required to monitor monitoring wells and groundwater and stuff like that around the site by DEC at all?
Yes, we have, let me try and remember my count. I believe there's 4 monitoring wells on the site at this point in time, and they are monitored annually by a third party.
Okay. And you send reports into DEC quarterly or semi-annually or something like that, right?
Correct, along with the outfall monitoring as well. So surface water and groundwater are monitored.
So I'm assuming, Bo, that basically addresses groundwater contamination or ground contamination, which a lot of older facilities did not have that. And so they left us with a lot of junk to clean up afterwards.
Thank you, Chuck. Appreciate that.
So, Bo, are you okay with the recommendations as they are?
Yeah, I have no amendments to make. Thank you. Appreciate it.
Anybody else have any questions or concerns? Okay, all those in favor of staff's recommendations?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Anybody opposed?
Hey, that's Bo. Thank you.
Any abstentions? Okay, so noted. Thank you, Joseph, for your information.
Thank you very much for your time. Appreciate the board's time.
Thank you, Joe.
Take care.
All right. And then the real big ticket item of the day. An application for a subdivision and area variance in the town of Virgil by Vaughn and Susan Sherman. They're looking at subdividing a 1 acre parcel with an existing single family home on it from a 291.1 acre parcel with a second single family dwelling also on the property. Reason the area variance is also included is because multiple reasons. The zoning law requires a minimum lot size of 3 acres and a minimum lot frontage of 350 feet in ARC districts, which this one is in. It only has, and as I said earlier, it's only 1 acre proposed to be, and a frontage of 263.38 feet. So a little bit of history on this site. The house that's being subdivided off onto a 1 acre parcel used to be subdivided off back before 2004 on a 0.88 acre parcel. Then in 2004, it was combined with the larger parcel, and now they wish to re-subdivide off that same 0.88 acres plus a little bit to make it at least 1 acre. We spoke to Mike Ryan from Cortland County Environmental Health Department. And he said that if these systems were to be changed or upgraded, the well and septic systems that is, that a waiver from Environmental Health, Cortland County Health Department, would be required as per their rule and regulations. Require at least 2.4 acres. Also, make sure that the well and septic systems that are there are not going to be on the other larger parcel. They're going to stay on the subdivided parcel. Also, there is a list of things that, according to the regulations, they have to provide in order for the final subdivision to go through. So that's also there. So, and then this is an unlisted action under seeker. So recommendations are that the applicant shows that the existing well and septic system for 276 Sims Hill Road, which is the going to be the new 1 acre parcel house, will remain solely on the new 1 acre property. 2, that the final plat be submitted to the town in compliance with section 520 of the subdivision regulations and compliance with seeker.
Motion to accept staff's recommendations.
I make a motion. Amy.
Second?
Paul. Okay,
Paul?
go ahead. Good.
Any- Have any discussion?
Hey Dan, when or if they were to have a failure, what do they do then when they only have 1 acre?
The counties, Tompkins County still lives with 1 acre building lots. I mean,
Do they?
it's,
Okay.
yes, we took this route to make it simpler, I guess. I don't know. Say, as long as there's room there to rebuild or whatever, you can do it, you know? And most of them allow for it, I guess, the way they're designed by the engineers, what have you.
Okay. Conceivably, would there be room in 1 acre for a well and a defunct field as well as a new field?
Oh, yeah.
Well,
Depends where the current placement is, I guess. Ask Chuck. He's a professional.
Yeah.
yeah, well, sometimes there is, sometimes there isn't is the problem. That's why they like bigger lots. All depends on
Yeah.
what your perk is and how big the house is and stuff. I've seen a few where they had problems trying to fit them on and get separation from their wells. But, you know, like Ryan ruled on it. If he's happy with it, you know, which fine.
Well, they're there. It's existing, so it's.
And that's
not like,
not a problem existing. It's if it ever fails and they got to build a new one, they might have a problem.
Right.
Like you said,
Yeah.
they'll if they grant a waiver, it might be tough, but it might be fine. So
Yeah.
Anybody else have any comments? Okay, all those in favor of staff's recommendations?
Aye.
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 Anybody opposed? I'm sorry, did somebody say an opposition? No, no oppositions. And abstentions? Okay, it's carried.
All right, so there are 3 returns this time around. So we've got 1 for Sheila Morse in the town of Virgil, where they're looking to subdivide along this line. This one already previously had a area variance approved, which is why they don't require one now. This is simply an area variance and subdivision were approved before the subdivision never got officially finalized. So now that area variance continues on, there's no expiration for that. They're just now actually finalizing that subdivision. So
For those of you who are familiar with the area, this is right across from where Pendleton Extension meets Tower Road. So right up there, there was a farm, a large farm that was originally part of the whole, it's the whole area.
Second one is also in the town of Virgil. Applicant is Joshua Rude. I was looking for a home occupation. Since it's a neighborhood residential district, home occupations are allowed by conditional permit, which is what he's applied for. So there wasn't really a map. We had the same thing last month. So he actually wrote up a little narrative, so I included that.
And I believe that is on is that on Washington Street?
That is on Church Street.
Or Church Street, yeah, Church Street.
It's real near the town hall.
Does the zoning regulations there, do they require parking for home occupation? Virgil,
I believe they say that they can't have any more than, I think, 2 vehicles at once in regards to the business, relating to the business. They don't require parking, but
I mean, being that there's no map, it's difficult to tell where
yeah,
parking.
yeah, there wasn't a map given. It's just your typical single family home.
Doesn't have an awful lot of space there to park extra vehicles anyway. They know where he is at.
Yeah.
Yeah, he generally pulls, from the conversation, I think he pulls the vehicle that he's working on into his garage to
Right,
clean it and then returns it to the owner.
right. Or he goes to their place of business and cleans up too. He's mobile.
Which is what he usually does, right, Dan? In case,
Right. Yep. Yeah, because he's done some of my vehicles before. Yeah, he'll come to your place unless he's in a pinch, and he'll have you go bring it over there and drop it off. You know.
He generally is doing his business mobile. It's just on particularly wet days, I believe, that he'll do it.
Right.
Yeah. And last but not least, town of Cortlandville. Our very own Dan Haynes is involved. But the applicant is James and Robert Lucas. They are right now. This is one parcel. They're looking to subdivide off this front bit and sell the rest off. We talked a bit about access, since this runs through the Empire Tractor a lot, but James and Robert Lucas, there's a bit of history between them and the business, but they no longer own the business. And for now, the plan is eventually this parking lot, they'll have to just use the bit on their own land, maybe expand on there. But for now, an access easement is going to be put through the actual access right now. And then in the future, this will become the access for this parcel. So any questions on those, I'll be happy to answer. I added a bit more detail because I do agree that maybe we should put a little bit more detail in there just for both our sake and the town's sake, just to really spell it out and not just, I go through all this anyway. Just this time I actually wrote it down instead of me looking through it and you all trusting me that not that I don't think you trust me, but make sure it's spelled out. You can double check.
I got a question for Dan on that. Dan, if you're buying it, that's the old gravel pit up there, isn't it? Is that what
Well,
that
it's right
that
beside
pit
it.
might be known for that?
They did a little gravel work in there. It's beside where they took the hill away there years ago. And Virgil had the last mining permit in there, and they had to clean up that other side of it. They took some out of there years ago, but not an awful lot over in there. I don't know. The gravel wasn't real hard in there. Is what I'm told.
Okay.
Up and back, my son-in-law farms it. There's a couple lots of fields up and back. My son-in-law works, so he'll do that, and we'll play in the rest of it.
Yeah, it was kind of left rough and just kind of left as a messed up, graveled out area. I wasn't sure if you're going to open up the gravel and then find out what to do. All right.
I don't know. I think I'm past that stage in my life.
So this does go totally up the hill into that area, right, Dan?
Right. Yep.
Okay.
Yeah, mainly what they're keeping is the road frontage, which in reality has the value.
Okay.
Everybody set with those? GMLs returned? How about we go? I'm sorry.
Oh, sorry. I do just want to mention, you see on the analysis on these return GMLs, what we're going to start doing too is generally, Alex, you don't happen to have an example letter on you, but we send a letter back to the municipality, and they're very generic letters, just that there's no negative countywide effect. And but instead, I think we're going to include some of this information with that return letter, so that if somebody, if a town clerk or the supervisor picks up that letter, there's not a lot of information referring about what the letter's about, what we have a negative, what we decided there's no big impact on. No real description of what the original application was for. So, yeah.
This is the letter we normally send to the towns. We don't give them much detail either. We hadn't been. So yeah, we're looking to add more detail to both. Maybe combine them into the same thing.
Good idea. Yeah.
All right. Well, we can get back. We can skip back to the referral policy reevaluation, unless anybody else has anything to add on the applications. Okay, so the referral policy number 1, and again, we'll get this process nailed down moving forward. We're just kind of getting in the groove here. So generally, we'll be going through these at the end of the year and having them set in December. So the referral policy number 1 just goes through the list of things that allows us to do a return letter instead of a full GML review. For example, the Virgil Sherman's area variance and subdivision. That is, we could not do a return letter for that as it is on a municipal boundary. It is right on the county line. And also, and also because they had, do you have that referrals back up, Alex?
Yeah.
Sorry.
Okay.
And they had the, yep, it's a minor subdivision with each lot clearly exceeding the county health department or municipality. So they had their area variance obviously pertained to the health department requirements. We don't see any issue. I would prefer to have projects like that come to the full planning board. So we've seen no issues in our limited amount of experience with this list. So if anybody else has seen anything that could have just been a return letter, but we have to do a full report for, we're all ears.
Excuse me.
Okay.
I don't see any
Anything
problem.
change from the previous version?
No.
Okay. Sorry, Chuck.
That's fine. I didn't see. One of the ones we had today return had a conditional permit, didn't it?
One of the ones that we returned for the
Say it needed a conditional
for the
permit.
home use, home occupation.
I thought you said that when you was reading it. Maybe I read it wrong. I
Yes,
just
you're
wondered-
right.
That wouldn't fall under the policy we have in place right now, then, correct?
So I have been treating conditional permits the same as a site plan review. Whether you determine that to be wrong, that's we can do that. But that's at least what I've been doing, and I believe Dan did that too, but I can't prove that. But
Yeah, I can't remember either. Just I'm not even sure a conditional permit is that much different than site plan review or why we have different
it's really not.
classifications, to
Yeah,
tell you the truth. But you might want to include that, or at least
it's technically
clarify
different.
that.
But
Yeah, right. All right.
yeah,
Maybe you want to clarify that in the future too. I don't know, but all right.
we can certainly, if we wanted to add a motion to clarify that now, or we just want to say that it's been this way. It's up to the board.
We want to,
Leave it like it is, and then if we don't like what you did, we'll yell at you. All right. So,
That's fine. yell at Alex, right? Is that what it was? Yeah.
It's all my fault if it goes wrong.
Mm, Perfect. Okay. Then do we need a motion to accept that as it stands? Or does it just remain revised as of December 2017?
I don't know for sure. Do you?
I don't know, but
remember?
I'm fine. I'm fine making a motion.
It wouldn't hurt.
Did we do policy number 2?
We
Yeah.
have
So
it.
do
We
you
can
want to do both at the same time, or do you want to do them separately?
I don't see why we couldn't do both at the same time.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay, perfect. So yep, up is policy number 2 for the planned unit development. So this has verbiage in it as well, this policy, that if we get planned unit development applications, there would be a 3-person committee that would consist of the planning board chair. So that would be Anne, myself, and the chair of the county legislators Ag Planning and Environmental Committee, which happens to be Bo. So for those of you who weren't aware, Bo is now the chair of the planning committee, which is great. So
Yeah, I wasn't aware of that.
yes, as of January the 5th, yes,
Yep.
was the 5th. Yeah. Yep.
Oh, okay.
So yeah.
I have to read up on planned unit developments more.
Exactly. I didn't realize I was going to have to pick this up too.
Well, to
Sorry.
be
I looked it
honest
up.
with you guys, this is kind of an obscure, this isn't a policy that really comes to the forefront very often. So
Out
we
of
were
all
also-
19 municipalities, only 3 even have planned unit developments.
Right.
And in those, there are very few parcels that actually are zoned planned unit development. It's very specific. And I'm sure in larger counties, it might happen way more often, but
So the town of Virgil, the town of Cortlandville, and the village of Homer have
Right.
planned unit development
yes.
locations. So we did a quick search and we couldn't find a lot of history electronically, but we were planning on digging into some of the hard copy files a little bit more to see. We were just having the conversation today and wanted to know, what have we seen? What, or has this committee met in the past on certain projects, and what have they been? So when we dig up some of that history, we'd be happy to share it with the board.
This was back in 2004.
Yeah, and that's in 2004 is actually when there was the state, do you have was it chapter 213? There was a law, in 2003 that actually created planned unit development districts. It's when it was first brought into legislation. So our best guess was that policy was in response to this legislation being passed, to be able to provide a local avenue for these areas to be reviewed.
I've never seen that.
Yeah, we found it deep in the drives.
Huh.
Please send me a copy of that.
Yeah, I would like one too.
Yep.
Yeah,
I can
it's
send a
very
copy to the whole
interesting.
board.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
would like that too.
Along with any projects that we can find records of.
Yep.
Cool.
We were kind of curious. So in our policy, the interesting part is, so that 3-person committee first does like a cursory review of this project, and then they decide whether it goes to the full county planning board or if it can go back.
Okay.
So
Just to,
um
so Just
As
another
you're-
bureaucratic step, really.
Well, I think if there are specific areas that the municipalities have a vision for, and they want to ensure that that vision is really upheld, then, you know, that's kind of what they're going for. So, so we'll make sure everybody gets, like you said, Ann, we'll get everybody policy 1 and 2. We'll get those emailed off to you along with that 213
Yeah.
legislation and any submissions that we can find from the history for those PUDs.
Is the one in Cortlandville it's been pretty recent out on is it?
Probably Walden Oaks.
Well,
Walden
yeah.
Oaks.
Well, most
Yeah.
of the approved one, I think. They tried to do one up there on, didn't they, up on Star Road? I'm not sure it went through that way.
Yeah.
Yeah,
That's developed, yeah.
Yeah, that did. Yeah.
And Virgil's probably Greek Peak and the
Virgil's Greek Peak, yeah, that whole area.
And
Cortlandville's probably Walden
Right.
Oaks.
Yeah.
Homer, could it be?
Homer's had a couple. Yeah, I think Homer's had up on the
Homer's got a couple
high
little
school that
bits.
never went through, and they had some, wasn't the Patriarchos thing one?
Well, I'm wondering if that one, that one hasn't gone before our committee for anything, has it?
That
Which one?
subdivision up in the north of Homer,
Yeah.
or what was it called? I don't remember what it was called, but yeah, it was that we reviewed a couple months ago. Probably should have been.
And they just weren't submitted to us, you know, and that's a tricky part. We don't go and you know, we don't monitor everything that's being done in all the other municipalities. We just work with what's given to us.
Okay.
So
yeah, make a motion
I'm fine with my original motion encompassing this as well.
Okay.
To accept them as policy.
I'm sorry, Paul. Can I get a second on that?
I'll second it.
Was that you, Dan?
Yes.
Okay. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Anybody opposed? Okay.
okay, then we'll move into the announcements. Just for those of you, just so everybody's aware, the open meetings law was set to expire on January 15th, I believe, but then legislation passed to extend it to February 15th. And what that does, it allows us to meet virtually and for everyone who is virtual for your votes to count. Otherwise, we would be required to meet in person. So as of right now, that's been extended to February 15th. You can see that our next meeting date is February 16th. Yeah, so it's kind of being tied right now with the state of emergency. Yeah. So as for right now, we will continue to schedule unless anybody feels strongly otherwise. We'll schedule our next meeting for virtual WebEx as well. We, you know, we'll kind of keep feeling things out and try to stay flexible with this. We'll hope for the best and look forward to meeting in person again as soon as possible, but also want to stay safe.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So, also, I think, Ann, you had a question or there was some conversation at our last meeting about attendance. I think. So Alex has the attendance sheet from last year available. And we'll also be, I'm sorry, with the list of things, we'll also have the bylaws included with the documents that we send out.
Okay.
So in our bylaws, there is no limitation, I think, with COVID as well. For anybody who's interested, we could also distribute this to the group as well, just in case anybody wants it. We have it all.
You're saying in the bylaws, there's no limit to attendance? Is that what you just said?
Correct. There was actually a revision to the bylaws. And do you remember what year that was?
2019.
Right. We
2019
changed
was
it
the
to
revision.
I thought there was. Wasn't there a 3 minute?
Yeah, there is.
3 in a row or something like
Yeah.
that.
Yeah.
I think
There
that was
used to be. It's
previously.
gone now.
Oh, really?
It's no longer in the bylaws.
Huh.
It was taken out in large part because, and this was a lot of discussion we had in the legislature about the bylaws, and it was because legally the legislature appoints everyone to the board, and only the legislature can unappoint. And so, I mean, certainly tracking attendance is important to let, the legislative leadership know, and maybe they look to, talk to that individual, maybe even take action to remove them. But in the end, it's legally only the purview of the legislature to unappoint somebody. And so that was why that was all cleaned up and taken out. But we still keep an eye on it, because if somebody's not able to attend or just decides that they're not doing what they've said they were going to do, then the legislature could potentially take some action on it.
I think the new verbiage reflects that. It says, with reason, then, if there's due reason.
Actually, it's
reviewed.
with or without reason. They can remove.
Bo, and just so you know, the only reason those were implemented, well, we had some times we couldn't have a quorum because too many people were missing meetings, so we couldn't take action. We had 2 or 3 meetings like that occurred around that time because people weren't showing up. And that's why I was in there. So if you are keeping on top of it, please do so. But there were times we could not have a meeting or wasn't a functioning meeting because of that.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, I absolutely. And I remember, that was an issue as I had come on the board myself. And it's definitely something, to keep an eye out. And, I think this legislature, unlike in many years past, is keeping an eye on things better, and is willing to step in and have a discussion if need be. So yeah, totally understand.
And also, for your reference, we have the list of members and with your appointment dates. We're happy to distribute these forms with the other ones. This is when you're appointed, the resolution number, when the term ends, to kind of give you an idea of when. And this is just a heads up, as we will be reaching out, in the next few months to some of the members whose terms end in June of this year. Just so you know, to not be surprised, and like Emma, I mean, I'm hoping that you're still interested because you're so new, but just because you're filling in for another member, that member that you're taking basically the place of that left, then their term would have been ending, so yours is, and we'll just need you to renew that. So just so those of you who are on this list, just a heads up if you see those letters coming in. And those will come from the clerk's office. They're really great at managing our members' terms and getting that updated.
And also, just to add to it, given that now I'm kind of chair of the committee that oversees this, I've seen everybody's work on this committee, and I really appreciate everybody's time and investment. And I think we've got a really great board. So I'd love to have everybody, stay and keep, doing the great work that you're doing. If you have concerns or you want to have a chat with Trish or myself about, maybe deciding to move off the board, let us know. We're happy to have that discussion. Or if you have concerns, let us know from an oversight perspective. But really pleased with everybody's participation. This is a different board, Chuck. I think even to when I started just a few years ago, and certainly before I came on board, some of the issues that we had. Everybody's coming and actively engaged, and I really appreciate all the hard work.
I agree. I think we have a great board.
Yep.
You guys are awesome. I love all the positive criticism too is always really appreciated, and we recognize that we're a pretty new team in planning, and we always appreciate everyone's patience with us as we kind of learn some of the ropes, and it's a learning process, but we're trying to catch up and kind of make change all at the same time. So
Well, I was going to say, I don't know if it is because of how Alex sends out the meeting notice, but it seems like previously I could never connect on any WebEx meetings, and now I don't have a problem. I don't know if the county upgraded their anything inside, Bo, but
I say we just give Alex credit.
Ah,
Just
no,
give him
no,
give him
I don't
the
know what
love.
I did.
no.
I used to be the IT manager at the city I used to work at, so I mean,
Trish made it clear earlier. She gets the credit, and then he's at fault if something
no,
goes wrong.
not really, not at all. Definitely not on this one. Definitely not.
I think there's
Yeah.
good credit to go around.
I think that WebEx also, on a personal, I've noticed that they've upgraded some of their systems in general, and I don't know if that's made a difference. But I did want to throw out there that we do also have capabilities for those who have had better luck. I think that I can get access to a Zoom license now. I know that has been mentioned in the past.
Well, that's when the WebEx was giving us so many problems, and I know Amy had issues connecting with it as well. But
However-
I haven't had any over the last 4 or 5 meetings or whatever. So, which knock on wood.
However, with Zoom, you get everybody on.
Yeah.
Usually, yeah. Right now we're only on if we're talking or something, or not all of us.
Mhm.
I think with Zoom, everybody is on.
Again, I think I used to have a hard time getting in too, but I think you must have cleaned up something. It used to take me a long time to connect, and now it got in the basic. So hopefully it's smoother.
Well, Alex, you're getting credit for it, I guess.
Yeah.
sure. I didn't do anything, but sure.
Personally, I think you two are doing a great job.
Other than my notice on when your picture isn't displayed, I have low bandwidth, but we can't blame that on WebEx, I don't believe. I believe it's our internet within the county.
Well, Bo can attest to broadband is on the forefront for Cortland County. We can tell you that much.
Yes, absolutely.
If nothing
Exactly.
else good has come out of COVID, hopefully the recognition of the need for good broadband internet access has.
Yeah. Us country folk.
Yeah.
Okay. Only other thing I noticed was Burnberry site, I think, has been approved for the rezoning. Is there any other projects that have moved forward, and are any news about them?
Big heavy hitters. I think Regan is still, in conversation as well with Cortlandville. We get their meeting minutes, and looks like they're still going through some back and forth.
Is that the apartments?
Yeah. Yep. That's that big apartment
I
complex.
think they said it might get sent back up here at some point, so expect that at some point.
Ann and Chuck, you'll probably remember this over on Lighthouse Hill. No, Locust Ave Hill. There was a project that came, and it's an R1 district, I believe, for a business, a garage with a business, and we said, no, you can't do that. So the garage was built supposedly for the house, beautiful house was built, and now I notice it's a full-blown business with trucks and whatever. So those things happen. You know, waited long enough, and then, you know, everything kind of went away. Do you remember that one? Do you remember that one? Locust
Is
Ave?
that at the bottom of Locust Hill?
No, it's halfway up. No, it's halfway up. Yeah.
And Locust? Oh, there's like a contractor or something like that, was it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Construction, isn't it?
Yes. And
Think
it
so.
wasn't allowable. The garage went up
Yeah.
supposedly for the house, but the house got built on the other side of the parcel, and now there's a big construction.
Yeah.
It happens. It happens. You know, over
Yeah.
time, commissions change, code people change. It happens. But anyway, just bringing that up.
Okay, our next meeting is February 16th.
Motion to adjourn.
Okay. Have a good night, everybody.
Thank
Bye-bye.
you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
Thank you,
Thanks,
everyone.
guys.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank
Bye.
you. You're doing a great job, guys.
Bye.
Thanks,
Thank
you.
Andy. Bye.
Bye.